they are the original way.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Development and Management Committee. Before we do start, since we've obviously got members of the public here, we'll introduce ourselves on the table. My name is Councillor Mohammed Adnan, and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight.
Hi, Neil Watson, Assistant Director for Planning.
Emma Barker, Legal Services Manager.
Councillor Ash Sutcliffe for Hallsfield and Roadside in Colne.
Councillor Sarah Coburn, Price, Portsmouth and Folbridge.
Councillor Richard O'Connor for Vibery Bridge.
Councillor David Gallier, Barrowford and Pendleshire.
Sajjad Ahmed for Red District over. Councillor Chris Church for Barn Aldrich.
Councillor Yvonne Tennant for Marston and Southfield.
Joanne Eccles, a Committee Administrator at Pendle Council.
Thank you very much. Item 1 on the agenda, declaration of interest. Does any member have any interest he or she wishes to declare? That's fine, thank you. Item 2, minutes. Will you please approve the minutes of the meeting which was held on the 16th of December?
Gosh.
Whoever move from please.
I'll move those.
Thank you very much. Item 3, planning applications. So there's only one application, which is 26/0019/HHO, which is retention of existing raised platform with the formation of a planting area to the rear garden at 19 Highgate Nelson. We do have a speaker down. Naz Shaw, please.
Chairman, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant. I am pleased to come before this committee following a recommendation for approval at the previous Planning Committee. The application was fully scrutinised by members of the Planning Committee who visited the site and judged the works to be acceptable. I hope members of this committee share the same view and are able to take a pragmatic and consistent approach. Members will be aware that this application follows a refusal of planning permission, which was primarily refused for a single reason relating to the perceived impacts on neighbouring residential amenity by way of overlooking. In preparing a resubmission and seeking professional planning advice, the applicant has sought to work proactively and constructively with the council at each stage to overcome the single reason for refusal. As evidenced in the supporting documents accompanying the resubmission, the raised area which is sited closer to the neighbouring habitable window would be utilised as a planting bed for shrubs and vegetation only, and not as a seating area, decking or for long intervals. I draw your attention to the briefing note which was circulated amongst members this afternoon referencing planning law, whereby the council is entitled to grant planning permission subject to conditions as it thinks fit. In accordance with this legislation, the council can control such circumstances and restrict the area for such purposes and not for the enjoyment of occupants in the form of a raised terrace. Paragraph 55 of the CPS states that planning conditions should satisfy 6 tests, including that they are necessary, relevant, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other aspects. Similar conclusions were reached in the court judgment also referenced within the briefing note that has been circulated to members. It is considered that the proposed condition can overcome the council's concern, is reasonable and would be wholly enforceable. The proposed condition would operate in a similar manner to many landscaping conditions used as part of a development scheme across the council area and across the country. Moreover, the council is able to control boundary treatments, including a close boarded fence which wouldn't wholly remove the overlooking concerns, but would limit views into the neighbouring property, further reducing any detrimental impact. This is clearly illustrated on the plans and would form part of any planning consent. It is also worth noting that the adjoining neighbour has not objected to the proposals, given there was already a level of overlooking to private amenity space and considers the overall development to not significantly exacerbate the original views. You will note the neighbours' comments within the committee report, which states the height of the top terrace is no higher than the top of the slope of the previous lawn prior to the current landscaping. We have no concerns over privacy from next door, as the height of the fence gives us sufficient privacy. It is also to be noted we would be replacing the existing timber fence by way of continuing the close boarded fence, which would also reduce any undue concerns. Overall, the impact to our living conditions would not be affected or even worsened by our neighbour's development proposal. The key point here is the fact that the neighbour who has lived in the premises for a number of years concurs with the applicant's case for the impact to be no worse than that of the original levels. It is acknowledged that planning is fundamentally about future-proofing the site. However, in this instance, it is clear that given the nature of closely adjoining properties, there will always be issues associated with some overlooking, and as such, this would be the reason as to why the council considered the impact upon number 23, which comprises of a conservatory, to be of insignificant concern. The council's previous comments on inaccuracies with the submission drawings have been reviewed by the architect and altered. The alterations show a 250mm reduction in levels, which would further reduce any impact together with condition boundary treatments. The council have supported the development by way of its design, accepting the proposed scheme to be policy compliant by way of materials and its overall visual appearance. On the basis of the overall context of the site and surrounding area, I suggest an unbalanced approach is undertaken given the existing relationship of adjoining properties with a consistent decision-making process. To reiterate, at the previous planning committee, the application was fully scrutinised by members of the planning committee who visited the site and judged the works to be acceptable. I hope members of this committee share the same view and are able to make a pragmatic approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, do you want to come in first, sorry?
Yes, just a point of clarification before members start. There is no submission before the council. I've not seen any information this afternoon that's come through. That's submissions to you, not to Pendle. So that information should have been shared with the planning authority. It hasn't been. You as members are on the committee, but as such you're not part of the mechanics of the planning department. So I can't advise you on something I haven't seen.
I haven't seen it either.
So my advice is that has not been submitted. So how can you?
I haven't been home.
You can't take that on board. That should be in front of the council in a formal way, but it hasn't been. So that puts us at somewhat of a disadvantage. I can speak about the conditions, etc. if you wish to. The issue is not simply about a condition to say you can't use that area for sitting out. You'll be gardening on there. You'll have to use and tend that area and be in there. It will be an almost I don't agree that it's an enforceable condition. It's almost unenforceable because you would have to be on that area to maintain it, to use it, to garden, etc. How would you differentiate between gardening and using it in another way? So one of the six tests is precision of conditions. I can't think you can write a condition that's precise enough to prevent use for one residential purpose against another residential purpose. And you've got to take on board as well, if you're tending whatever shrubs in whatever nature you are then on that area of land looking towards a neighbouring property. So I haven't had the benefit of that should have been given to the planning authority to consider. It hasn't been, so I'm giving you general advice in the absence of that being formally submitted.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn-Price.
So question for Mr Watson. Are we sensible to defer this so that you can fully scrutinise the new information that's come in?
It would be useful to see it, even if I could see it and adjourn even for 10 minutes, so I could look at that and see whether there's any information in there which is of relevance. But I think it's unfair on us as a council to expect to comment and take on board points that have been made when we haven't got it.
So shall we do
Then
that? Please could I have a printer?
If he's happy to do a 10-minute adjournment, at least all councillors who haven't read it as well, we'll give them a chance to read it as well.
And it should be in the public domain as well, so that members of the public can see it. So that's the whole point of this.
Okay, so
I think we've got to defer it.
What do you say?
Normally when I attend committee meetings, the briefing notes are for the members, so I do it the same with Blackwood Borough Council, I do the same with
I think better please defer if let's confirm.
I agree.
It was the
I
case
don't
at the
particularly
last
want to come back. I will try and deal with it if we can have a small
There's
deferral.
no new information within the briefing note, should I say. It's strange
just-
in terms of...
But nevertheless, I need to be, and
Yeah,
obviously
it was
legal
saying
Joanne,
documents, I
I've
need
just,
to see it
I've just
as well.
forwarded the email to you, Joanne, that we received.
Can you get copies, Joanne?
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be grateful.
It'll take. I need to switch my
You need to
computer
take
back
a
You've
on.
just got
to
that.
defer,
Yeah,
or
Shall we take a vote on that then, please, to defer it for 10 minutes? All those for? That's fine, thank you. So we'll have 10 minutes. Has everyone else got it? Thank you very much. So shall we bring Neil back in person?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the copies as well. It's, Chair, it's not a great deal, you'll be thankful to hear that I can add to what I said previously. Chair, yes, you do use conditions in a way that you think are appropriate if they can control things. So the first thing is this condition actually says in the reason to avoid a detrimental impact on the living conditions of neighbours. So you'd be accepting, or this condition is accepting that the use of that area per se is not acceptable to number in relationship to number 21, and that's the purpose we're here. John, it also mentions control of boundary treatments, which that is something we considered, but what the legislation does in the General Permitted Development Order is allow 2 metre high fencing to go up to allow neighbours to protect their own privacy from adjoining neighbours if they wish to. They can avail themselves of that. So current neighbours at number 21 may, for example, not object to this. They don't object to it, it's clear. But the next neighbours, if they sold, may want to put a fence up. The decking would make it so that that fence will be ineffective. So that's the thing to consider about boundary treatments. You're going to be higher up, and it does slope away anyway, but that raising of it does make a difference. So 2 metres wouldn't resolve that issue. It will at the other side, because the other side's at number 17 Highgate, because that is raised anyway, and you could put a fencing along there, that would resolve that. So take that on board. So I think here, this certainly wouldn't be unacceptable. Would be unacceptable without the condition. I suppose my advice to you is whether you think that a condition would overcome the impact on privacy by saying you can only effectively garden there, because you would have to allow some impact there. Chairman, my advice is that gardening still would allow people right next to the boundary within 6, 7, 8 metres of the windows, and it would still overlook them. So my view on that a condition wouldn't make that the difference in order to approve. That's, I would suggest that's where the debate may want to end up and consider whether a condition of that, in your view, overcomes the privacy concerns.
Do you come back in place?
May we see the picture that was on the computer during the interval? no chalk ices. That one, because perhaps you'd like to talk us through that a little.
Do you know that is merely intended to show you where from the height of the fencing, so it's a height differential, where the new raised platform will be, so that it gives you an indication of
where the ground used to be and where it is now.
Well, where the ground used to be is halfway down the boarding, which is there. So I measure, it's on the plans at 57 centimetres. It's not fully, as you can see on this photograph here, this is where I think the ground level was. So it's somewhere halfway down that board. So it's about 57, 60 centimetres, so much higher than where it was before. But it was a grassed area, as you can see. It formalises an area as well, which when you formalise things, people tend to use it more.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, I don't know whether this is relevant or not, but in terms of that area's status as an area for gardening, from looking at it, it is, I know it could be changed, it is narrow strips of muck with paving in between. I believe the lady called it a herb bed. I know that that says that there will be some tending of it and some presence there, but it doesn't strike me as the sort of, well, he's on an all Saturday kind of gardening. As I say, that may or may not be relevant, but that's an observation from being there.
Thank you. Councillor Barros?
Yeah, I've visited this particular application a number of times now.
Surely it can't be
He's allowed to discuss.
He can speak, but
I can speak. But I can speak.
Yeah, he's allowed to speak.
Is he allowed to speak? I thought
Just
he was
got
allowed
vote
to
on it.
speak, but not vote. Is he not allowed to take part at all?
I thought previously members had not been allowed to join in the
No, but that's not
committee
the
at
vote,
all.
they're not allowed to.
No,
They
when,
haven't.
if you remember at Barnoldswick, I can't remember if it was Councillor Whip arrived late and he wasn't allowed to join in at all. I mean, it's not personal.
Not
but
councillor
he's
Wood
not
was
allowed
there.
to.
It was the other councillor that was there, but he could speak and he did speak.
He did speak on it.
He did actually.
He did. He just wasn't allowed to. So someone substituted, Andy Bell substituted in place of him.
Yeah, allowed to speak,
Yeah,
but
he's
not
allowed to
allowed,
speak,
not allowed
yeah,
to
we
take
can't
part in the
speak.
actual
Well, that's fine,
debate.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the only reason why is because there was a previous application which was right next door to this particular application, and that was a lot higher and it was literally facing into this particular garden. And if you look at it, they've actually tidied the garden up. They've not made it look worse. They've tidied the garden up. They've worked with the neighbours. They have worked with the neighbours. But the previous application, that particular application is overlooking this particular house. It's literally the building that will be made. The windows are overlooking in this particular house. So the only concern I've got, all they've done here is tidied it actually up. They've not really done major work to it, and there's going to be planting pods there. That's what's the whole purpose. There's no seating area there for them to overlook in next door's garden. But they've worked with the next door neighbours as well, who are very comfortable with the situation. They have no problem with it at all. So I can't seem to understand why it's still come to development management, even though it's approved in area committee, and it's come to development management, so which is still very concerning. But I'm sure you've been there to do a site visit, and it does look actually quite nice. And what they're trying to do is making the area look better and making the housing look nice as well.
Yeah.
So just some points of clarification. This is the neighbouring property. As you can see, the upstairs windows were required to be obscurely glazed. It is high, but there's a high platform there anyway, where a 2 metre fence could have been put up under permitted rights. So that secured the privacy in terms of ensuring that they're not overlooked from the first floor. There's an element of overlooking at first floor. Anyway, Chairman, I've said this on a number of occasions. You're not, as a planning committee, here to, if a neighbour doesn't object, that's not a reason to approve.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're here to look at the relationships, because properties change, people change, and we're here to make sure that the relationships are acceptable for anyone, not just neighbours. We don't know why neighbours agree or disagree in situations. That's not for us to judge as a planning authority, you to judge as a planning authority. It's whether that relationship is acceptable, full stop, not whether the neighbours agree or disagree.
Councillor Sutcliffe?
Thank you, Chairman. So when we got the report and I looked at the images that were included, I looked at the original garden, as we see it on the right, and I thought, nice pleasant garden and somewhere that you would enjoy. You'd have a little picnic perhaps, you could enjoy that, as most people do, and you have family around and you just enjoy that bit of lawn at the bottom. And we mentioned about fences and boundary treatments and things, and you would be shielded quite happily from seeing into your neighbours' properties, and so that it looks like a pleasant, comfortable sort of garden to use. When we visited the site, I was struck by just how high up we were when we stood on that raised platform, and you could see straight into not just next door neighbour's garden, but straight into their windows as well, and you were pretty much looking at sort of bedroom height, first floor height, rather than just ground floor. So I was really struck at that. I didn't actually stand on the top platform, which was another, at least a foot, 12 inches a foot above where I was stood, which would have given me an even higher vantage point over into the next door neighbour's garden. And that took me by surprise, because when I looked at the images that were supplied, I expected that if the lawn as it is, if you were stood at the top of there, you probably wouldn't want to. You wouldn't stand there. You wouldn't put a chair up there because it's angled. You would never have used it like that. But because of the way that this has been constructed, it's now a usable platform. It's a usable space. It's somewhere that you would spend time. And so I'm really concerned about the impact on the neighbouring property. And I think it's unfortunate, really, as happens so often actually at this committee. We say it's the lay of the land. It's nothing to, it's not anything to do with what anybody's built or done. And obviously we're judging what somebody wants to do and has done here. But if it wasn't for the actual slope of the land, it would be in a different position, because it just wouldn't be as high. So could it be controlled by a condition? I really don't think it could. I don't think that you would be able to distinguish between whether somebody was out there sunbathing, having a picnic, you know, playing with the kids, or gardening and tending to a herb bed. I think that that would be right to put some gravel in and use as a hard standing, a solid surface, and, you know, put some chairs on there. And I think that's exactly what would happen either by this, you know, the current occupier of the property or a future one. And if we're talking about future proofing and we're talking about the, you know, the rules around planning, around how properties have relationships with each other, then I think that's a really important one to consider. And for that reason and the reason set out in the report, I will move refusal.
Chair.
Just 1 second. I just want to add, you know, the top height where the agent was stood at one point when we were there. Our dad stood there and you couldn't see into the neighbour's property at all from that point. From where the bed is, I didn't stand there. Maybe from there you probably could, but from the top you couldn't. Or you
just a question to Neil. Neil, that fencing, the grey fencing that we can see there, which is now obviously the brown fencing, how high is that?
I've not measured that. It's as high as it was before. You can see the levels because there's a before and after picture. But you can also see though that platform at the back. It's above where the level of the grass was before, so that is elevating that.
Sure, yeah. But looking at the previous picture, obviously it seems like it's about 5 foot. Is it roughly about 5 foot?
Roughly, because I could see over the neighbours.
1.6.
I'm not exactly the tallest of all people, and I'm 5'5", I think. But if I stood back there, I'd overlook and see everything in the next door property. So what difference would it make?
Them are the neighbours who are actually here as well. The ones who recorded you were looking into then.
I don't mean over the back. I mean you can stand at that point and look to the next door neighbour that way. Is that 23?
Chair?
20.
Sorry, back again. The neighbour that lives on this side of the property as well, there's recently been a planning application that was approved. If you stand on literally the grounds there, you're overlooking from literally waist high into this particular property. So I still don't understand the logic behind it all, because
There's a fence there.
There will be a fence there, and that's that site adjacent, which is that one. We're talking about number 17. It's raised anyway, a level across, so it actually, that raising makes it a better relationship. And if you put a fence across there, which is in the report, that would remove that loss of privacy.
Councillor Sarah Price.
So I'd like to sort of explore a little bit on paragraph 3 of this briefing note. It says, members will also be aware, I have to confess I wasn't aware, that the application follows a refusal of planning permission.
Similar application.
Oh, I see. So this was before it was built?
No, subsequent.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's been refused twice?
Yes.
Right. And who refused that?
Delegated.
Okay. Right.
So I had to, it was delegated. Yeah.
Okay. So it's essentially the same thing?
Essentially.
So we're looking at the same thing again?
Except there's a different proposal for the gardening area, shall we say.
Oh, I see. But the heights are the same?
Yeah.
Okay. So really, to me, I can't see any difference, really. And obviously you don't move things to development management lightly. If you often come to Cone Area and you say, well, actually, you know, people could see this design differently, and you explain to us that it's reasonable sometimes to potentially see it slightly differently from the officer's report. Sometimes you say that to us, and sometimes you tell us, no, there's only one way here, essentially, with the National Planning Policy Framework and the development plan.
Chairman, the kind of advice that you would get, not the kind of advice, it's a bit slang, but the advice I would always give is design is a matter of subjectivity in some senses. Dormers is a good example of that. They don't get referred here, but loss of privacy isn't a negotiable thing. If you think there's a loss of privacy, you should refuse. There's no, if you were put in front, not just at this application, any application, in front of an ombudsman and say, oh, there's a loss of privacy, how then do you defend that as a council? Design is different. I thought the design was good. Loss of privacy, if you come to that conclusion, you've got to come to that conclusion. It's not something something that you compromise on. If there's a loss of privacy to a neighbour, then the right course is to refuse.
So you've made it very clear to me that, and therefore I would second Ash's proposal to refuse.
Can I just ask a question? That platform's already there, isn't it, where the bed's going in? So why is putting the bed in making any more loss of privacy than what's already there? It doesn't make sense to me. Surely having shrubs there would provide more screening rather than contributing to loss of privacy.
It shouldn't be there.
It's the height of it.
So it's the other way around, is saying that having the shrubs there will mean that that will be a tended garden. Put a
Right.
condition on there that you can't use it for everyday recreation.
Right.
Enforce that. That means that the activities will be on the other side, which we're not concerned with. So they're arguing the other way around, that would actually reduce any impacts on neighbours, and that's an enforceable condition.
Okay. Well, in which case I would move to approve with the condition.
I would go with that.
Anything? Do you want a second
I
that yet?
second that, yes.
What condition?
Is that the condition?
And you're the speakers on that? That's fine. Yeah.
I don't see how this can be mitigated with a condition. I mean, so we talk about fencing, we talk about fence heights. In order to get a close bordered fence around the edge, the outside of that, surely it will be so high for next door neighbours to mitigate it, if that's what the mitigation is, the condition. Am I reading that right? It will be a close, or is it just that it would be called a planting bed rather than a garden? What would the condition read?
The condition would be, we might tweak it, but it's something along the lines that's been put in here, effectively stopping it being used for normal everyday activities, only being able to be tended for shrubs. I.e. you can go on there and you can cut the grass or cut the rose bushes or whatever it may be, but you can't put decking out and you can't sit there and recreate and have a barbecue, etc.
Okay, well I do have a reputation of being extremely cynical, but I just don't believe that would ever be the case. I think that people would be gardening on there day in, day out, and as Neil says, it would be very difficult to differentiate between that, so I just don't see how that condition could be enforced, and I think that's one of the tests of conditions as set out by or explained by Neil and the agent.
That's fine, thank you. We'll move to the vote then. We have all the speakers. So we're going to go for the vote for the motion which was moved by Councillor Yvonne Tennant and seconded by Councillor Select Kevin Salter. All those for the approval?
That's not Kevin Salter.
Sorry.
Nearly right.
Sorry. All those for the approval? All those against? And then I'll use my cast vote on that for the approval, please. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.